Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm Michael, and this is episode 7. This episode is scheduled to release on the 4th of July, so I hope you are either having currently or have had a wonderful holiday. But you are in for a treat today. Today we're going to speak with Jermaine Hodge. Everything Jermaine does, he does until he's perfected it, and he is damn near close to perfecting his storytelling. Jermaine and I talked much longer than expected, but we had a hell of a good time. It did make for some tricky editing, but I'm happy he came on to tell us his stories. Now, I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoyed recording it. So thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again to Jermaine. Now let's let Jermaine tell you his stories. Jermaine, thank you so much for joining the Hunting Stories Podcast, man. So happy to have you here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait to share stories with you.
I got tired of hearing other podcasts where you were telling yourself or touting yourself as a storyteller. I just knew I had to have you on, man. So let's kick this thing off by having you introduce yourself to the folks that don't already know who you are.
Well, my name is Jermaine Hodge. I am 18 and a half years in the Army, and I'm formerly from North Carolina. Tar Heel State, God's country is what they call it. But I moved out to Colorado in 2005, and I've been hunting elk since. And truly been blessed with an opportunity to chase the elk, and been successful year in and year out. And it hasn't been due to non-practice. I've been practicing since the day that I knew I drew a tag. So from that point, here I am, your 2019 men's world champion, and got on stage in 2019 at the beginning, and it's been a lot of fun. I use that as my practicing tools, but at the same time, the real truth is in the woods, because the real judge is that elk. When he's coming in, he knows the truth. So
absolutely. And I'll mention real quick, you said 2019 world champion. You did not say elk calling world champion. And I'm sure you're champion of many things, but specifically today, you are an elk calling champion, man. And that's cool. That's super cool. What was it? What was it like competing in that? And I am a novice caller. I think I could trick an elk once or twice, but what was that like, man?
Well, I could tell you that, my background is competitive wrestling. Olympic style wrestling. I wrestled Greco-Roman wrestling on a senior level, Olympic style senior level, since 2005. And I'm going to tell you, the nerves that when I step on the stage to compete at that level is undaunting. It's real. But when you slap hands, the nerves go away, because it's time to produce. It's the same thing on stage. But the thing about, like, when I'm on stage elk calling, those nerves never go away. I have no clue why they never go away, but they never go away. I'm always nervous on that stage. And I believe that has a lot to do with being judged, right? Mm-hmm. It's subjective. And you have judges that they don't see you, but they hear you. And so you're always being judged. But I think if I had to put the difference between wrestling and competing on the stage for elk calling, I think the biggest thing for me is when I slap hands with wrestling, we touching skin to skin, and it's on, right?
Getting after it.
But we getting after it. But and it's only two judges, right? me and him, yep. Right? It's only two judges. Well, I can't say there's two judges. It's referees, right?
Yeah.
But on the stage, when you're competing against someone, he's calling, you calling, you're like, man, he's just as good as me. I don't know how they're gonna go with this. I would take this dude elk hunting any day. And then some that you compete against, you're like, man, well, if I lose this one, it's something wrong with the judges, kind of thing, But the nerves never end when it comes to elk calling. Like, my nerves, like those stomach jitters, they never go away when I'm on stage. I think they might go away, but they never go away. When I'm on stage, when I was on stage competing as a competitive wrestler, they went away as soon as we slapped hands. It's on, and only one person's gonna get the hand raised. So it was different, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm in love with it, and I use it as a practicing tool to get ready for elk season.
That's awesome, man. That's so great. All right. Well, I want to get to the stories, but we have one question that we talked about just briefly before. What tags did you draw? I know that this is going to be posted a few weeks after the draw season is over, but what do you got?
All right. So I won't tell the viewers what unit, because that's not fair to listeners, and then I might get some hate mail, right? I might get some hate mail. I don't want that. So what I will tell you is this: I drew a stellar elk tag in Colorado. But before all that, to kick the season off, I applied for a Barbary sheep in New Mexico, and it was a long shot, and I drew that tag. That tag is going to test that tag is going to test my physical ability this year. But we're not calling those in. We're trying to shoot them at a long range and try to get in close as possible. But I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a great hunt. And
the rifle or archery?
A rifle. I went out last year with archery, and it was not fun. It was like, bro, if we go down here, we might die. And so I went out with a buddy last year, and I fell in love with it. And I told him, I said, I'm going to apply once for a rifle tag. And I'll, if I didn't draw it, I'll keep applying for it. But lo and behold, out of 6 of us, I was the only one that draw that tag.
Of course.
And I said, holy smokes, I drew the tag, and everybody's calling me. And I'm like, I can't believe I drew this tag on the first time. So I'm truly blessed. I feel like I'm gonna go down there and kill a big ram, and then so that topped the season off. And then my buddies were telling me, man, what would be like the top of the season? And I said, well, if I draw this elk tag and I draw a moose tag, I said that top it off. Well, in Colorado, I knew they would go with big ticket items first, so they would go moose first. And then they drop down and they do other items. And lo and behold, elk was kind of towards the last for Colorado. And moose came out, and I didn't get an email. And I was like, I didn't get an email. I said, man. So I looked up my stuff, and it was at a freeze. It didn't say I had a point. I said, man, guys, I said, I might have drew this moose tag. And then I get an email later. My bubble got busted. No, you did not draw this moose tag.
That's all right. Like, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Oh my God. I said, I thought I drew it. I said, that would have been crazy. So, and I wasn't expecting like the deer tag. In Colorado, there's a lot of great units for deer. And I just applied for a unit that I knew the most. And we went out, and I've hunted this unit multiple times, and I told my wife, I said, well, let's get back to the roots of things, and let's both go out and do some archery things together, because my wife works full time. She don't get a lot of time off, and she's killed a lot of big bulls. I mean, there's deers on the wall that she's killed. There's monster deer, and she's killed a couple big bulls. But let's get back to the root of things, and let's try to, start doing some archery hunting together. And lo and behold, me and my wife drew this archery tag, Southeast Colorado. And my wife is from Southeast Colorado, and it's some great deer out there. And so we're going to try to get out there and try to do the deer thing again. And then lo and behold, my son turned 12 this year. He was in the pool. He was in the pool, but I knew he didn't have a chance, because he didn't, he didn't have no points, but it's okay. So the kids didn't draw anything. Me and the wife drew the archery tags, and then towards the end of the draw of Colorado, lo and behold, boom, I hit my elk tag.
There you go.
So I'll be hunting this year in a stellar unit that I hunted last year. If you guys are following me, if you ain't following me, follow me on Jermaine Hodge _ Colorado. And I promise you, if you looked at last year's results, I haven't even posted videos, just a few videos of like small encounters. Haven't posted any long videos yet, but these encounters were super, super aggressive. I called in 35 bulls last year, and over 30 of them were over 300 inches. And
Wow.
I was only keeping count because I wanted to know if I wanted to go back to that unit because I didn't draw that unit and I was only helping buddies with those tags.
Oh,
And
wow.
so when I went out there, I was keeping count. And I don't keep count on a normal basis, but I started keeping count of all the bulls. And I as soon as season was over, I already knew what I was going to apply for.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to draw the tag. And then so I went on that
Mind if I
barber
ask how
shoot,
many points you put in?
5
Okay.
5 points. 5 points. And then, you know, normally in Colorado, if you're a resident, 5 to 9 points. I wouldn't go over. I wouldn't dare go over 9 points because you can get
Yeah.
into some stellar units in Colorado with 9 or less points. As a resident, as a non-resident, you're gonna spend a lot more points. Lot more points. If you know Colorado is as good as I do, 9 and down, maybe even 7 and down, you can get into some really good units and you're going to produce some really good bulls. And don't overlook the units that they say these units, you know, they only have, you know, 2,500 or 3,500 in that herd. Start paying attention to those units because those units are your sleeper units.
Yeah. I'm a newer hunter, so I don't have quite that many points, but I went in for antelope, mule deer, and elk. I went long shot on the elk, did not get it. I did get my mule deer tag, but that mule deer tag was kind of a if I don't get my elk tag, it works out because it's the same unit as the over-the-counter unit that I typically hunt. And my antelope tag, according to all of the online systems that give you all of the percentages, I had a 100% chance of drawing that tag, and I did not draw that tag. So point creep got me this year. So
Wow.
yeah, so
Wow.
I'm pretty disappointed I didn't get that antelope, but either way, I still have. I'm gonna have an over-the-counter archery elk. I did get my B tag for elk, so I'll third season rifle, and I got a mule deer that overlaps with my archery elk. So gonna have some fun either way.
Well, exciting story. You know, I drew this elk tag, and in January when I went on that Barbary sheep hunt, and I came back from that hunt, I got a text message from a good buddy of mine. He is one of the co-founders of Howl for Wildlife. His name is John Salone, and he hit me up, and he said, "Hey, what you know about Colorado?" And I said, "Well, you know, I got on the phone with him and we figured out how many points he had. And I said, well, listen, man, I said, this is the deal, man. I'm going into a unit. This is what I ran into last year. I would love to have you hunt with me this year. I'm probably going to be tagged out before you get there because he was thinking about later in the season. I said, well, just come up there with me, man. We'll have some fun. So I got a cameraman that's coming up with us, and we're gonna film all this, and it's gonna be great, man. So John Stallone from Arizona, he's gonna be coming up hunting with me, and I mean, I couldn't ask for a better year.
Yeah, sounds like you got a lot of fun times ahead of you, man. So that being said, we're gonna have you back to tell all the stories for 2020's hunting season.
No, absolutely.
But man, let's kick it off. Why don't you set the stage? Tell us.
Let's kick it off like this. So last year I had an amazing story. It was a crazy story last year. I thought I had spent many years in the elk woods, and I know what elk sound like. And I had my wife out. She drew that stellar tag that I got this year. She drew that tag last year. And like I said, I was the only one that didn't draw this doggone tag, and I was so upset with myself. But I'm beating a dead bush, but I didn't draw the tag, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna help everybody tag out. And my wife comes up, and they know when my wife comes up, I'm dedicated to my wife, and she only has 4 days off. So I'm like, we gotta spend all 4 of these days humping it and grinding it out. And so day one, we go up into an area that we call Serena's Hill. And Serena's Hill is nicknamed after my wife. My wife's name is Serena, and it's nicknamed after my wife. I asked my wife, I said, where do you want to go? And I said, I named all the spots, and she's very familiar with the area because we've hunted here multiple times when it was easy to draw. And she says, I want to go into my hill, right? I want to go into Serena's Hill.
Of course she does.
And so we take off, we park at the trailhead, and we take off up in there. And I said, well, I'm not gonna make a sound until I get over to this meadow that overlaps, like it's a big cliff that drops into this meadow area. And I told her, I said, I'm not gonna make a sound until I get to that point, but it's still dark. It's not, we're archery hunting, by the way, and it's not time to shoot. So I get up to this particular area, and it's probably about 15, maybe 20 minutes before shooting light, before we can see pins, right? And even if you can see pins, it doesn't mean it's shooting light, because when you pull back and you're looking through that peep sight, it doesn't mean you can shoot yet, right? So we're roughly right around 20 minutes out of shooting light, and I lay out a bugle, and sure enough, to my right, where we were heading, there was a bugle. To my left, the trailhead that we came in on, to my left, there were two bugles. There was an itty bitty, a smaller bull. You can tell he was an adolescent bull. And then further back is about 300 yards from him. And I'm just guessing. He sounded about 300 yards from him on the same kind of line, contour lines, was another bull.
I've been waiting for that noise.
Doug Flutie, dude. This dude, he had no voice. No. His voice sounded like a very new adolescent hunter that just learned how to, this is his first year in the Elkwoods, and he learned how to bugle for the first time.
He's trying.
Yeah,
let me ask you real quick. Is this like early season, peak rut, late season?
Mid-season.
Okay.
It's gotcha. Mid-season. And so, going back to what you said, usually during the beginning of season, I use a lot of my bugles. Mid-season, I mix it up. And then late season, I use a lot of cow sounds with bugles. But I mean, all sounds work throughout the month of September, even October. Shoot, they work all season long. It doesn't matter. I've had them sound off in November. But so this is mid-September. And so we got three bulls sounding off, and we got one that sounds like Doug Flutie. We got one that's an adolescent bull, and then we got one to the far right that we were going to that definitely sound like a mature bull. And I had no problems with him because he was at a distance. And I said, okay, we got three different bulls. Let's get to this wood line and let's sit and wait until daylight. So we get to the wood line to my far left. We get to the wood line, and we get to that wood line. I wait. I tell my wife, let's just wait. I'm not going to make a sound. And I throw out another cow sound right when it was like, I could look at my wife's pins on her bow, and I'm like, can you see him? She said, yeah. And I throw out a cow sound. The small bull did not sound off again, but that Doug Flutie bull, and he went off again. I was like, dude, this is a guy. This dude, I don't even know how, because it wasn't even a truck parked where we were parked. And the nearest trailhead from us had to be 2.5 miles. So 2.5 miles in the dark would have took you a minute to get to where we were. So I was like, man, and it was up and down these gnarly hills to get to where we were. So I said, man, could it, I'm just questioning it. My wife's like, it sounds like a bull to me. But remind you, my wife, this she only been bow hunting for a certain amount of time, and then she missed 4 years. So now this is 4 years in the making. And I said, babe, this is Doug Flutie. This is some guy that hiked in from some other place. I said, I don't know. I said, I'm truly bent on this. And I bought into it. I said, I was selling myself on this. I said, this is a dude. I said, watch, when I chuckle, he's gonna chuckle. This dude chuckles immediately. He did exactly what we should do in the woods. And I said, God damn it. I said, okay. I said, this is what we need to do. I said, we need to jet down this hill and start getting into our area. Because remember, we had a bull on the far right that was sounding off. I said, let's just get down here and get ahead of this. So we get down and then we get to the wood line and it opens up to this meadow. But there is like this wood line that's right in the middle. It's an island in the middle of a meadow. And remind you, this happened last year.
Yeah.
It is fresh in the head. And so we get to this island of woods, and this bull started chasing us. He was moving so fast. I knew at that point, I said, ain't no way no humans catching us that fast. I said, babe, get ready. I don't think this is Doug Flutie no more. I said, this has to be a bull. And by the time I seen that, I seen legs. I seen legs coming across the meadow. I was like, oh my God, that's a bull. So I branched off her and I started diving down the hill about 35 to 40 yards from her. And I threw a bugle down the hill. I seen his legs moving. I said, oh, this bull. And I pointed at my wife. I said, he's coming. I said, he's coming right. I pointed right or left. I said, I don't know. He's coming right or left. But we're in an island and she can shoot either way. So I just wanted her to be ready. And this bull comes in. I was like, what the? And when I seen his rack, dude, I freaked out, man. This dude was a huge 6x3.
What?
He was gnarly. He was gnarly on one side. I'm not lying to you. Promise you on my kids. This dude was huge. If he had both sides, a 6x3, and I'm telling you right now, if I had to put inches on this dude, a 6x3, unheard of, he was probably 300 inches.
Okay.
But if he had both sides, he was a 350 bull.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was 350 bull both sides. But he only had
That's a big 3 to keep it up to 300.
Oh man. I'm of course, that's just me field judging, but he was huge. And I was like, dude, this is a shooter bull. This is like the club of all clubs. He's crazy. He had his brow tine, he skipped his second, and he went to his third, and he went to a dagger, dude. It was nuts. Man. So I thought he was gonna come up on the top side, and he came down low between that meadow, that island of woods. He came down low. And me and my wife practiced, and she's a chip shot, man. She shoots lights out. And I don't judge anything that she does. I don't question anything she does. But then when I looked at her,
that's a good husband.
When I looked at her, I said, damn, she's not even ranging. I said, okay, that's some stuff I would do. I said, I can field judge, out to about 60 yards. I'm good. So I'm thinking she's good too. And I'm like, I see her come to full trial. I'm like, she's about to smoke this bull. Any bull that close, she's about to smoke. So when the bull comes in, I kind of already field judged him, and I'll tell y'all what I judged him at later. And boom, I stopped the bull. Shoots right over his back.
Oh.
Shoots right over his back.
Oh,
I can see the arrow. Boom, right over his back. He balls out. He turns back to the right where he came from, and I stopped him. I field judged him again. I'm going to tell y'all what I field judged him again and later. Field judged him again from where I was. So field judged him again. I was like, damn, I know where I would hit. And she doesn't shoot. And he kind of walks off and medals off. She was kind of knocking the arrow, kind of getting herself settled again. And I threw up my hands in frustration. I was like, what the heck, man? And she doesn't realize like why I threw my hands up. And I had been through a couple of frustrating moments throughout the season before she had got there. And I threw my hands up and I said, what'd you judge him at? She said, 40. And I said, babe, he's like 25 or less. And she said, no way. I said, you didn't like range any grass or anything that she's like, no, shot right over his back. I said, babe, you shot right over his back. I said, but let's continue hunting. I said, there's some more bulls that are out here. We get into another scenario. And if you go on my Instagram and go back, I talk about, I threw a video out and I said, your classic estrus scream or estrus buzz. I said, listen to this bull. This bull was huge. He's a big 360 bull when we got on him. This was after she had missed. And I called in 2 satellites off that herd. This herd was 70 plus, and it was a big herd bull that had about 60 cows with him.
Wow.
I didn't know how many cows he had at the time because I didn't see him. I just heard him.
That's a massive herd.
And I called in 2 satellite bulls, and I told my wife, I said, do not shoot any of these satellite bulls I call off this herd. I said, if I call that herd bull, you will know it. You will know it. You'll see. You'll know what that shooter looks like. And I called in 2 satellite bulls off that herd. And later on, we ended up getting back. I called in 2 satellite bulls within her lap, 15 yards within her lap. And she didn't shoot, did exactly what I told her to do. And then we circled back later on that evening, and we got on that big herd bull, and I got him into within 70. But he had about 60 cows with him, and I could not trick him because he had so many hunters calling at him. It was crazy. Yeah. It was crazy, man. I have a lot of great stories with my wife, and I'm gonna tell you. I was at Colorado Bow Association. I think it was like March 18th, and I was doing a elk calling seminar, and I didn't realize I said what I said, but I said, yeah, I have a lot of great encounters with my wife. And everybody started laughing. And I was like, oh, it slipped over my head, guys.
Yeah, Jermaine, you had one of those earlier. You said something about your wife and how you guys were humping in the hills. So I guess that's just a casualty of telling hunting stories about you and your wife, man.
Right. You know what? She's as innocent as possible. She knows how to call elk, like elk calls, like basic elk calls, but she doesn't get into like major stories. I know this though. A lot of my great stories are with her, and people don't even understand. Like, man, I didn't even have a camera with me. I wish I did. I did.
Man, I would love to see that 6x3. I would love to see that final dagger coming off that bull.
Dude. Listen, I don't say this much. Like we tend to go after some bigger bulls here in the house. We're not choosy. We don't pick a lot of different bulls. We don't target bulls. But when you see a bull like that, it's hard not to fixate yourself on something like that.
I'm sure.
It's hard not to. And if you see a bull like that, you tend to want to go after something like that. I think he had a genetic defect, or he didn't have the genetics. He was missing something on the genetic pool. But either he was injured, but usually injuries cause like drop tines or crazy stuff going on. He had everything going on with him. He was missing points though.
That's weird. That's super weird.
Which is super weird for me. Like I've killed some crazy club bulls, and they they have drop tines or they have daggers going out. This dude had everything that his left side was, but his right side. I'm trying to figure out what side it was. I think it was left side crazy or right side. I don't know. It was regardless.
Yeah.
He was nuts, man. He was nuts. That was a great story. And he was a Doug Flutie of all bulls. And I thought he was a human.
Yeah.
I did not think he was a bull.
Somewhere Dirk Durham is just grinning. Somewhere.
Dirk Durham was grinning on this one. And I told him that story. I said, man, you won't believe this. He said, are you serious? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, go. That's the story of all stories.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, what else you got for us, man? That was a good one.
Well, I got another great story that this was, so I started hunting elk. I started trying to call in 2005 and I started hunting elk in 2006. So in 2007, so I killed my first bull in 2006 and they said it was a fluke. And I said, no, it wasn't a fluke. I said, I just work hard and I'm going to continue to work hard. So 2007, I ran into an area that I didn't know anything about. And I went in there and it's like a beaver dam drainage area. It's great water in the area. It's great foliage. It's good food, and kind of picked it off the map and just kind of dove in. And I ran into some muzzleloader hunting. So you're talking about like mid-season September. And I ran into some muzzleloaders. I didn't see anything that evening and didn't hear anything. And there were some guys I ran into. They said, man, yeah, man, we've been getting into them last couple of days in here. We ran into like a 380 bull. And I was like, 380 bull? I was like, bullshit.
Colorado?
That's like bullshit. I called BS right away. I was like, no way. So I left that night, and he was a great guy, man. He wasn't those BSers that you run into all the time. Great dude, man. He didn't feel like I didn't get any vibes of him telling any lies. I went back to camp and I cooked up some hot dogs. I mean, if you're in Colorado, you try to keep it simple as possible. You know, fuel the beast and keep it going. Yeah. And hot dogs, hamburgers, keep it simple. And sure enough, I was racking my brain. I was having some beers that night. And I said, damn. I said, man, what if this guy was telling the truth? And I just kept pounding myself. I said, you know what? I don't have a plan. So let's just go back in there. But let's get back in there real early before anybody gets in there. And I said, let's just go deep, like high in there. I know if they're going to be low, I said, let's just get high. They're going to move up. I said, whether I bust them or not, let's just see what happens. Sure enough, I go through the woods. I got red lights and green lights on. I park and I take off. And I said, I'm going to get about a mile up in this. I'm going to get about a mile up high. And from that area, if you get about a mile up, you can still see the truck, but it's a long ways away. And I got up and I threw out a bugle in this little valley drainage area. Nothing, man. Nothing. Threw out some cow sounds, nothing. I moved 500 yards to the left of me. And this is when I was just learning how to really like communicate with the elk. And I threw out some, back in the day, the hyper lip Primos call. I was using that. And I threw out some of those hyper lip sounds, and I had a calf call back. So I started calf sounding to that calf. And then that calf got close. I said, oh, snap. And this bull just erupts. He's freaking giant. I could hear it. I was like, oh my God, this is a giant. Even if I didn't know he was a giant and he just showed up at a 5 point, I'd have been like, dude, this dude is big. And I said, man, but he was a dragon. So based off the story that the guy told me the night prior, he said he seen two bulls fighting. He said one was about 360, one was about 380. The 360 kicked his butt, took all the cows. He said took all the cows but a few cows. He said the other one took a few cows with him. And I said, ain't no way, man. I said, so then let's fast forward it. I called this calf in. This calf is coming in, hot on the string. And I can hear other cows with them. So I set up behind this pine tree, and this calf shows up 10 yards in front of me. Another cow shows up. More than likely, that's mom or another adolescent. Another cow shows up. Another cow. 4 cows showed up. And then right behind them, I could hear these trees cracking. Boom. And this dude bends through the woods, and he has his head leaning to the right and leaning to the left. Now, as a mature hunter now, I would have been at full draw already.
There you go.
I wasn't.
Of course.
I was still mesmerized about what's happening. And I said, oh my God, he's pulling the rear. I said, I should have knew that. I all this stuff is going through my brain. I was like, I should have knew this. So the cows had me pegged. They had me pegged down. I'm not moving. And this bull shows up. He sways his head to the right. He sways his head to the left to get between the trees. He is a 7x7, a 380 bull. I promise you to date, he is huge. I said, they say, don't look at antlers. Dude, that's all I can look at. That's all I can look at. I said, man, this dude is ginormous. He's 10 yards from me. So I got my release on my string. I'm ready. I'm like, and he's licking his lips. And I was like, dude, he's checking all these cows. He has no clue that I'm here. He's checking all these cows, but the cows know I'm here. They have a feeling. They don't smell me.
They're looking for you.
The thermal started going up. The wind started going up. They have no clue, but they have a feeling. Mm-hmm. And or they might have caught some movement early, like the calf might have caught some movement early, and they started looking at me or looking through me. And I got my bow set there, and I'm like, man, you know what? Let's just try to draw. And I get to halfway into my draw. The cows take off exactly where they came from. They came from right to left. They boogie out and take a U-turn, go from left to right. The bull swings in and follows. When he does, this dude gets stuck between 2 aspens. I'm not lying. His antlers hit these aspens. He can't go nowhere. His antlers were too big, and he was stuck. I could have shot him at 40 yards. 40 yards, could have shot him, quartering away. Boom, could have shot him. But I was so stuck and mesmerized by, dude, is this happening? Are you kidding me? No one's going to believe this story. I said, the only way they believe this story is if I shot this bull. So he backs out and does a reverse, moves his antlers to the right, moves his antlers to the left to get to the trees. Dude, it was crazy. I told this story. I remember this to my date. I will go to my grave with this. This dude was so huge, he got stuck behind 2 aspens. He was huge, man. He was huge.
In my mind, I just see that bull just charging through those aspens, knocking them over.
Dude, he was stuck. They were too big. The aspens were too big. Boom, he hit him. He was done. It was like hitting antlers to antlers. It was like 2 bulls. Man. Boom. And they lock up and they don't really go anywhere and they just scuffle. Dude, that's how it was. He was stuck. I went and looked at the tree. The tree was all scuffed up because he was trying to get out. But dude, man, I worked that bull from like 10:30 to like 2:30 in the evening, and I got tired of working him. Mm-hmm. He had bugled so much, he had started sparking up other bulls on the hill. It was crazy. What I should have done, now that I look at this, what I should have done is I knew he was locked on to the 4 cows that he had, the calf and the 3 cows that he had. I should have. He sparked up one bull that was above us. I should have circled up above us and worked that other bull, but I was young. I was a young hunter. I was stuck on the story of him getting stuck in the aspens, man.
Man, the best
I was
lessons.
stuck on that story, man.
Yeah, the best lessons are self-taught, man. So you learned something that day.
Dude, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot picture these stories. I could only say this. If you're not in the woods and you're not trying to elk hunt, you will not experience some of the things that I'm going to tell you, or some of your podcast viewers are they not going to experience this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get out there and get after it. And if you can get after it, man, you're going to experience some outrageous stuff, things that are crazy.
Yeah, keep it coming, man. Next one. Next.
Hey, a quick story, and this one was kind of freaky, man. So for some of you guys that are scared of dark, you might not want to listen to this one.
Uh-oh.
So
I'm gonna save this for the Halloween episode, Jermaine.
Yeah. So I say this, and I don't know what happened prior to this particular hunt, but I pulled up to this area. I got permission to cross some private land going into public land, because all the land that we hunt, primarily all the land we hunt for elk, is public land. And so what I said is I had permission to cross over this private land to go in this public land. And that was really the only easy access. Otherwise, you had to go around a lot of stuff to get into this area. So I contacted the landowner, talked to him personally, and got permission to go through this like small private. So I parked there in the morning, and I was waiting for like daylight, not daylight, but right at break of day. And when I was sitting there, I was just listening to a little bit of music in the truck. Truck was off, just a little bit of music. The volume was really low. And I felt something hit the back of the truck, boom, and then jump off. I was like, holy smokes, my freaking stomach dropped to I was like, oh my God, what the heck was that? I was by myself. I was like, all lights on. I cut everything on. I cranked the truck off. I was like, oh my God. I said, oh, this is some Halloween shit. I said, God damn. I was scared to death. I had to talk myself up to get out of that truck. I got out of the truck with my flashlight and was like, hey. And I was looking around the truck. I could not tell you what the heck happened. I don't know if something jumped in the back of my tailgate or something jumped on the back of my cab, but I know it was in the back of the truck. And it jumped. It was something that made my truck drop, and it was fast. And I said, oh my God. So I get out the truck and I'm looking with my light, and I'm scared to death. I said, I'm waiting to daylight. I need to see everything. and I told my wife this story, and she was laughing her butt off. And I said, I'm telling you, babe, this happened. And
it's like noon before you leave your truck.
No, it's not noon. It's not noon, but I was like, holy smokes, it needs to be daylight before I go out. Because I was all distraught, and I was like, man, I don't know. And this is before I started carrying like a pistol with me. And sure enough, I wait until daylight. And I got questions in the back of my head. I'm like, man, something ain't right about this. So I get back into the area, and we call this area Super Bowl. when you get into this area, either it's on or it's not. And it's usually when it's on, you cannot stop these elk from bugling. It's nuts back there. So I get back into the area. It's nothing going on at the moment. And I had my head down and I was calf calling. And I started calf calling. And something said, "Look up, you idiot." And I said, I need to look up. When I looked up, there was a mountain lion looking at me about 65, 70 yards from me. He was looking at me. And all I had was a knife and a bow. And I said, "Oh my Jesus." Big cat, 200 pounder. And I said, "Jesus." So I'm wrestling for my knife, and I'm like, "Oh my God, if this thing jumps on me, I'm gonna be the shittiest meal that ever ate. I'm just gonna shit myself." So it turns, it looks at me, it turns like, "That's not a calf." And it turns and leaves. And I said, "Oh, is that easy?" And sure enough, it kind of dawned on me like these cats are not really like targeting humans. They're out there hunting. And that's when it dawned on me like, if you have a predator actually stalking you and hunting you, they have some issues. They're starved, or the biological ecosystem is messed up out there. And if they're stalking humans, it's something wrong out there.
Yeah.
So, or they could have rabies, but that case is really, it's rare.
Jermaine, maybe you're just delicious, man. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Sweet chocolate.
Oh man.
But that was a quick story, but that was scary as hell to me. So for you guys that are scared of the dark, man, bring some flashlights. You'll be all right.
Yeah. Or carry a pistol with you. Whatever makes you comfortable.
I do carry my pistol. I do carry, from that point on, I carry my pistols now.
I bet you did, man. That's funny. I don't want to leave your truck, and I'm not even in your truck. That was a good story, man.
Oh man. Oh, hey, I got a great one for you, man. This goes down in history for me, and it means a lot to me. Kind of means a lot to where I am now, kind of how I think about things. And I'm talking about weather, and I'm talking about like expect the unexpected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was in a particular area, and my wife, we got her this tag, and it was an over-the-counter unit tag, and I had killed my elk already, so I was already tagged out. There was a few guys tagged out in the area, and my wife was to meet me late season into September, and she's going to spend her birthday, which is September 25th, up there with me. So I think we spent 24th, 25th, 26th. She had like 3 days to hunt. And she don't have a lot of days to hunt, but when she does, she's in them, and I'm going to get her into them. And she got, I think she drove up the night of the 23rd of September. And I'm at camp, and she has a pin drop of where we are and everything. She's never been up there. And I'm at camp, and it's 6:00 at night, and I'm already expecting her to be there. And I'm like, man, where's she at? Well, lo and behold, it got to the point where I was like, man, I need to go to the nearest camp, because my buddies have my truck. They have my truck, and I don't have means of contacting her. I have no cell phone service, nothing. And sure enough, I wandered to this camp, and I asked the guys, I started, casual conversation. I said, listen, I said, my wife is supposed to be here around 6:00, and she's not here. I said, you mind running me to the nearest town, which is probably about 30 miles away? And I said, man, I'll pay you guys anything. And they really wasn't interested in money. And I was like, listen, how many elk have you guys been into? And I started spitting that to him. I said, you guys ain't been in elk? I tell you what. I said, tomorrow I'll dedicate my day to you guys. I'll put you guys in the elk. And if y'all don't want to hear that, I got meat at the camp. You guys can take home with you. You know, I was just like, man, I was just to the point where, hey, this is my wife. I need to make sure. And they knew I was so sincere about my story. I was like, just take me to the nearest town, man. And so finally, I convinced them to take me to the nearest town. They didn't ask anything out of this. And I was giving them all kind of coordinates to where you should try. And couldn't get a hold of my wife. I was like, man. So on the way back up, I told him, I said, man, I said, my buddies are hunting and they have to come up this drainage. I said, I'm gonna wait right here, this drainage. I said, I don't know, maybe she doesn't show up, but my buddies will show up at some point. I said, so I'll just wait right here at the bottom of the hill. Well, they went up to the top, and sure enough, they ran into my wife. She was coming down. She was coming down the hill, and they waved her down. I told them what kind of car she was driving. I said, you know, if y'all see it, just wave her down. And they waved her down. They said, you looking for your husband? He's down at the bottom of the hill, and he's been trying to contact you. And so she makes her way down to the bottom of the hill, and it's super dark. It's dark as dark can get. And I'm listening to bulls on the other side of the drainage. From the road, listening to these bulls. I was calling to them with my cow sounds. I didn't have a bugle tube. I just had my diaphragm with me. I was talking to them, and they were just going nuts. I said, man, we got some elk there tomorrow. And I was so engulfed in like elk hunting, but I reminded myself, hey, you're not here for them, you're here for your wife. And so this car comes down the hill, and my wife, this is my wife's car. She's coming down the hill, and I'm looking at the car. I'm like, man, this car looks familiar. And it's dark, completely dark. And I said, is that my wife? I said, I knocked on the window. And she freaked out. She's like, what? And she rolls down the window. She doesn't know who I am. She rolls down the window, and she looks, and she busts out in tears. And she was like, oh my God, I was lost. I was this, that, and this. And I was like, where you been, babe? Where you been? So prior to all that, I had found some elk in a different drainage, not the ones that I was just talking about that was across the drainage. I found some elk, and you know, we kind of sobbed up and went back to camp. I fed her good and got some sleep. And I told her, I said, we're going to go in this area. I said, I wasn't expecting no rain, nothing that day, because the elk that we did find, it was only ones and twosies. Like I found them, they were sounding off, but they weren't crazy. And we didn't kill anything that evening. So I was like, I know they're in there, so we just got to get back in there. Sure enough, I told my wife, I said, just gear up and let's get in there. We should be able to call some of these elk in. Sure enough, we get out of the vehicle, and there's only 2 tags left to fill. My buddy from North Carolina and my wife. And he goes his separate way. And we go in the same way, but then we branch off, and I got my wife. And we get into a herd. It was unheard of. I've never been in this many elk. It was about a head of 200 elk.
Holy shit.
200 elk. So it started raining on us. We didn't have any rain gear. We wasn't prepared for any snow, nothing. And it started raining, and then it started sleeting, like that grapple stuff. Like wet kind of snow. And then it just started sticking. It was nasty. And we were out there with bare minimum stuff. I had enough, stuff in the pack to survive, but we were soaking wet at one point. And I said one point, the whole trip. But I kept pushing my wife. I was like, it's some giant bulls in here. I said, let's just keep at them. And they were just going nuts, bugling everywhere. It was no stopping. And we just shadowed the herd. And we got to a point where we had a big, we had two bulls that were over 360 fighting. And we watched that fight. And then we had a cow was 30 yards from us, and she was making some extra buzz, extra screams. She was going nuts. And this was the first time that I've heard this in person. I've seen it on videos, but I've never heard it in person. And sure enough, one of the satellite bulls comes over. He's over 300 inches, maybe about a 310 bull. He comes over and checks her.
310 satellite bull. Okay.
310 satellite bull. 310 satellite bull. Comes in, checks her. She's not ready, so he leaves. And he's tending to a bunch of different cows. But he's trying to wrangle up all these. I mean, it's a herd of 200. It's crazy. So we seen two bulls that were over 360 fight. And then we mingle in a little further, and we had two bulls that were over 380 that were fighting. And we watched two fights within hours of each other, and it was nuts. And we got close enough to a bull that was just over 300, maybe 305 or so. And that screen score, I'm just on a hoof. And he came up off the hill. My wife was soaking wet, and she was shaking. She came at full draw, and she was shaking. I told my wife, I said, let it down. I said, let it down. I said, ain't no way. I said, you ain't gonna shoot that bull. I said, you shaking too bad. And we got to the point where we shadowed this herd, but she was shaking so bad. And she had asked me a few times prior to that to let's leave. And me being me, I was like, no, let's keep going. and then I said, damn, I'm gonna have to carry my wife out of here, dead or alive, if we go any further. And I told her, I said, let's go, babe. Let's go. Let's go back to the truck. And we was probably roughly around 3.5 miles from the truck. And it was just soaking wet, miserable snow. We get back to the truck. She's freezing, almost borderline hypothermic. And my buddy was in the truck, and I told him, I said, close your eyes, babe. Take your clothes off. I turned that fucking heat up as high as I could just to warm her up. She was borderline. I got her back to the camp, and her clothes were soaking wet all the way down to her drawers, man. It was bad. And that's the life of Colorado and out west, man. It could turn on you in a dime, and we didn't know, and we wasn't prepared. But now, looking back at stories like that, I'm prepared. I always have, either some rain jackets or something to prepare myself. Now, we could have hunkered down and made fire, but that wasn't going to do anything justice because her clothes were soaking wet.
Yeah,
she'd have been out there butt naked trying to warm up. Yeah. So, I mean, it can turn on you in a dime, but I don't. It's for the viewers. I don't want to, dishearten you from coming out to Colorado, but just be prepared because you can turn your head one way, and in 5 minutes, and it could change on you. So same with the mountain lion hunt. It's like, man, I wish I was a little bit prepared for that.
But I wanted to tell you a story about the coldest I've ever been, which was it was sleet, it was rain. The funnier part about
Colorado.
No, this is actually Washington. I'm hunting muzzleloader in central Washington.
Ooh, right. Get cold up there.
Yeah, oh boy, it does. And it's probably mid-October. And there's nothing to do with elk about this story. This is just me being cold. But basically, I'd hunted for a couple of years with my in-laws. Didn't really know what we were doing. Either way, apparently behind my back, they've been making fun of my camo. So I went to Sportsman's Warehouse with my father-in-law and bought this whatever. And I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome, but they've been making fun of me. They've been laughing at me because my pants were like MC Hammer pants, just like the crotch was at the knees. I was struggling to get over downfall. Like I was struggling, but I was warm and I was dry. they made fun of me enough to the point that I bought a whole new set of camo. I don't even know what brand, but it fit better. It was tighter to me. And the first morning out, we go into Washington, and when you go out in Washington, everything's wet when you go out in the
Yes,
dark.
it is.
So we're walking through grass. It's about waist high, soaked from the waist down. We get up to our spot. It's like a 2-mile hike straight uphill. We get up there and I sit in my little spot. There's like a little placard because some gentleman, he'd hunted there throughout the years and that was his spot. So I was like, well, it's good enough for that gentleman. I'm drawing a blank on his name. For me. Yeah, I will say it's like Bergie's Roost or something like that. So I sat down in Bergie's Roost. I'm like, this is good enough for me. This guy, this is where he spent his time and he put up a plaque when he passed away, his friends put up this plaque. I'm gonna hunt here. Hail, rain, everything you could imagine. And I'm wearing my new camo, not waterproof at all.
It's soaking through.
Oh, I am soaking wet. I've got like a tarp that's like 4 feet by 4 feet. I'm trying to hold above me. And in Washington, the muzzleloader laws, you got to have your breech plug. It's open. So yeah, I got to keep that thing dry. So I'm like trying to cover up my breech plug. I'm just doing the best I can to keep that 2 inches dry. But I've never been more cold in my life. And it was miserable. And I didn't have anyone to tell me to get naked and turn the heater up because I just had to hike 3 or 4 miles back to camp and do my best to just dry my stuff out for the next day. So it's tough. Basically my sentiments is towards your wife. That is a tough day, man.
It is a tough day, but you know what? You know, that was one of the best, but the worst hunts I've ever been on. Not for me. Like I could have stayed out there a little longer, not much longer than she did, a little longer because I was starting to get wet too, and then, but after the fact, I'm like, man, I wish I would have been a little bit more prepared and had some things in my pack, and you know, I at that point I had been hunting for years. I should have knew better. I should have knew better for myself. I should have knew better for my wife. I mean, shoot, I got some of the best camo, not only just the camo, I'm in the military. I got some of the best rain gear ever. I got some of the best rain gear ever. And why would I not have that in my pack? You know, so, I mean, when you leave the military, if you lose that gear, it costs you it costs you too much money. You too much money. I mean, some of that rain gear, if you price it, you know, just for the top and bottom, so that rain gear, it's $300-400. And then if you look at some of the top line rain gear for some of the, you know, like Numa or Sika, it costs you $300-400. So it's pricey, it's very similar in fashion, but at the same time, durability too. So I should have been ready, and I had this stuff with me. Not on me though, and that was the worst but the best. I mean, it was amazing, man. It was amazing. Yeah. It was a trip, man.
I got another story. Hundreds of elk. I hope to see that someday. So that's a pretty awesome story.
I mean, that was like a herd of 200, and I'm just guessing it could have been more. It could have been like a little less, not much though. It was crazy. I got another crazy story for you.
Do it.
I know it's like elk, like we getting into elk stories, right? But I got to give you this hunt. So I was taking my buddies up elk hunting in this particular area, and I already had tagged out, and we were in the area that I had scouted before, and I knew it was elk in this area, and we started getting up to close to where, man, we should be getting in the elk. And I smelled something. I said, man, something's stinking up here. It's nasty. I said, man. I kept smelling it. It smelled like death. And I said, I got to keep my nose in the air. I said, I'm going to follow the smell. Sure enough, we walked up on a cow elk that had been shot in the hind quarter that was dead. It was during archery season. Somebody made a bad shot. And I said, wow, man. I looked at it was an arrow and everything. I said, man, They made a bad shot. They couldn't recover it. It was a whole cow elk, and that was an either sex tag, over the counter either sex tag at that point. And I said, man, somebody made a bad shot. They couldn't recover it. They didn't see any blood or whatever. It was very far back, and I kept the arrow because we had a camp that was close to us, and I said, man, maybe those are the guys that shot that elk and didn't recover it, but I'm gonna keep that arrow just in case, because you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bear hunt off this carcass.
There you go.
And so we went up, and that carcass sat for 3 days. We killed an elk between the point of me trying to hunt that carcass. But elk was priority, so we went in and hunted elk. We killed another elk, and then after 3 of us were already tagged out, I went and hunted that carcass 3 days later. When I got up to that carcass, I dropped a buddy off on the meadow. He had a elk tag, and I dropped him off on the meadow. And I said, well, listen, if I'm gonna swing wide and around and keep the wind in my favor, and I'm gonna hunt this carcass. So I went up there and got the wind in my favor and ran into a bear probably about 100 yards off that carcass. And the bear kind of moseyed off. And I said, well, I'm gonna sit. The only possible way I could sit on this carcass was like 30, 35 yards from this carcass. And I sat on the carcass. Anyways, I shot a bear off that carcass, about 75 yards off that carcass. It was a big sow. She's 9+ years old. And I waited to see if she had cubs. She didn't have any cubs or anything. So, boom, I shot her. And when she hit the ground, she tumbled and ran down the hill. Anyways, we had to come back the next day and recover her. But when I went back down that night, I got my buddy from that meadow, and I told him, I said, man, I'm so nervous. I was shaking. I was shaking like a leaf because I was like, man, I had my handgun with me, had my rifle with me. I was like, man, it was a rifle tag during archery season. And I got down there, my rifle was unloaded, but my handgun wasn't. And I was shaking. And I told him, I said, just hold my stuff. I need to unload this gun before I fucking shoot one of us. And so I unloaded the gun. And he said, what happened? I said, dude, I shot this bear. She tumbled and then ran down the hill. And I was too scared to go after her because it was getting too dark. And I said, I don't know if she was still alive or dead. So I circled back and I said, the best thing to do is just pull out of this situation and come back in the morning and get her. And anyways, we went back to camp, and I knew the bear was hit lethal, but I didn't know where the shot was because I'm sighted in 100 yards, but she was 70, maybe 75 most.
Yeah.
So I knew that shot was probably going to be high, but I didn't know exactly. I knew when I hit her, she hit, tumbled, and ran down the hill. And so went back to camp, kind of celebrated. I kind of kept it, kind of mild. But I took that arrow and I said, hey, let's go over to that camp. Let's see if one of these guys has shot this bear with this arrow. So I went over there and I broke bread with him and I said, hey, is this one of y'all's arrows? And everybody was denying it at camp. They were like, no, this ain't one of our arrows. They really didn't shoot that cow. That was none of their arrows. But it must have been somebody within the area. But I was shooting shit with them, and I made some long story friends with those guys, and now we're still friends, and we actually hunt together now. And I was telling them the whole story about what I just told you, and I said, man, I shot a bear up there off this carcass that somebody had shot this elk off of, and they didn't find the elk, and I found the arrow. Well, that wasn't their arrow, and I was just making fun of them throughout the whole night. I said, it's one of y'all's arrows. But I seen all the arrows, and it wasn't none of the arrows. But anyways, I went back up the next day, and I had shot that bear a little high, and that bear survived through the night, and she had drug her hind quarter all the way down about a half a mile, and we tracked her from probably 8:30 to noon, and we found her. She was still alive. And good thing, because I didn't want the meat to get ruined.
Mhm.
But we finally found her and I finished her off. But that was a crazy story, man. Just finding someone's arrow that shot that elk and then go up there and kill a bear off that carcass. That carcass was finished within 3 days. It was nothing
Wow.
but bones. Nothing but bones. And when they say it ain't a lot of bear in Colorado, it's a lot of bear in Colorado. A lot of bear. You just don't see them. It's a lot of bear in Colorado.
Absolutely, man. I think I've seen a
Man.
bear most days that I go elk hunting. I see a bear. I may or may
Yeah.
not see an elk, but I will
Yeah.
see a bear.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's insane. I mean, it's a lot of bear here in Colorado, but I mean, it's incredible, man. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Come on, share a story. You got one with me.
Oh man, I'll tell you a little bit about. I'm just thinking about a carcass just being devoured quickly, man. I shot a whitetail in South Texas with a shotgun, double out buck, on a river. Oddly enough, but it's a dry river. But I shot this thing, and I went back a week later just to go hog hunting, and the entire carcass was gone, and the hide was like 150 yards away. Like they ripped that thing apart. And I mean, that was a week later, but still, those hogs, man, they are mean down there in South
That's what
Texas.
I was about to say. It was hogs that did that?
It was hogs. It was hogs for sure, man. I saw more hogs than I saw whitetail, and I saw some big whitetail, but I saw a lot of hogs.
Jesus.
Yeah. No, it was amazing to see how little was left. The only thing that was left was the hide. They ate the bones, they ate everything but the hide.
See?
And they just dragged that a couple 100 yards. So, man, that's all I got, Jermaine. Jermaine, you've been killer. This has been fun.
I got plenty more stories. You just let me know when you're ready to go.
You know what, man? Let's call it for tonight. Yeah, let's call it for tonight. But I'm gonna have you back. I'm gonna have you back because this has been fun. But why don't you tell the people where they can find you? I know that you obviously got your Instagram and you're all over the place. I think you're starting a new kind of elk learning institute. Maybe give me a little bit of information about that.
Well, they can find me on Facebook through just Jermaine Hodge. And then we also I'm a co-owner of Colorado High Altitude Hunters. It's just a small, like, educational kind of base, web-based thing. And we're just starting off and trying to get our name out there. And we're just trying to educate people about elk hunting, especially coming out west. A lot of people that come from Midwest from the East Coast spending all this money to come out hunting. And I kind of said something about that earlier in the podcast, that you spend all this money to come out west and you're unsuccessful. Why? Why are you doing that? I got points in why Iowa, for example, I got points in Iowa that you got to know somebody. And if you don't know somebody, you start from scratch. So with points in Iowa, I plan on going out there killing something big because that's big money. Even though it's not the price of an elk tag, it's the same principle. I'm going to spend money to drive out there. I'm going to spend money on that tag. I'm going to spend gas money. Same principle as if you coming out west and trying to hunt elk. And if you're trying to come out here west to do this, then why not be successful? And I think, with experienced hunters, why not pass that education on to novice and maybe hunters that been out here 2-3 years and ain't got it done yet. So with the knowledge that we have, we try to pass it along. And so that's Colorado High Altitude Hunters. And you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. And then we also have Twitter too, but I'm not in control of Twitter, so I'm gonna let my buddy control all that. But I'm not a big Twitter fan. But you can find me on Jermaine Hodge _Colorado on Instagram, or Colorado High Altitude Hunters Koha on Instagram, in the same way as Facebook too.
Awesome, man. Well, I will make sure to put links to all of that stuff in the show notes because you just gave me a lot. But this was fun. This was fun, Jermaine. I hope we get to do this again soon because I know you got plenty of more stories. And in fact, next time we'll probably have your wife on with you because I want to hear the true stories. How's that sound?
Hey, she's not going to deviate off her. I might exaggerate a little bit, but she's going to tell you the truth.
Yeah. But that first elk was 45 yards, 25 yards. We'll see. We'll see. All right, man. Well, thank you so much, Jermaine. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
All right, man. That was awesome.
All right, guys. That's it. Another story in the books. If you have any feedback, please let us know. Just go to @huntingstories_official on Instagram and direct message us. And of course, while you're there, do not forget to follow. Now, I want to thank Jermaine again for taking his time to share his stories with us. And I hope you enjoyed his stories. I know we'll be bringing Jermaine back for another episode because I actually had to cut him off from going all night long. So for now, go to Instagram and follow @Jermaine Hodge _Colorado and @Colorado_HA, that's HAH, for Colorado High Altitude Hunters. Really, make sure you follow Jermaine as he is regularly dropping bits of knowledge on hunting and calling, and you don't want to miss any of them. And of course, don't forget to head to your preferred podcast app, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever you're on, and subscribe, review, comment, and of course, share the podcast to help us grow. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this podcast so far. As always, we will be releasing a new episode every week, as long as I can keep up and have people willing to tell their stories. So thanks again for tuning in. Now go make some stories of your own.